Welcome to the Life with Grief podcast. I'm your host, grief and transformational life coach and fellow griever, Tara Accardo. Join me in welcoming Leah Stern to the podcast, who is not only training to be an associate marriage and family therapist, but is also a fellow griever who lost her father. In this episode, you'll gain insights on coping with father or parent loss, anticipatory grief, surviving the first year after a death, and jealousy and other darker emotions and feelings we can have while we're grieving. We also dig into ways of keeping our loved ones' memories alive, some practical coping mechanisms, the importance of staying present, and how we can take the best parts of our loved ones and apply that to our own life. This heartwarming and deeply relatable episode provides such valuable perspectives and emotional support for anyone navigating grief. Leah, welcome to the Life with Grief podcast. I am so excited to have you here today. Your energy just right now too, like even before when we were just talking, is like, it's so good. So I'm so excited to share you with everybody today.
And thank you for having me. And I feel the same way with the energy, and I love your story. So
Thank you. Yeah, well, I resonate with parts of yours as well, and definitely want to get there. What I love to start these guest episodes with typically is you just telling everyone a little bit about you. We will absolutely cover your official story of loss and grief and all the things. And I understand these are very intertwined, but any fun facts too? I love to just like let people kind of tell a little bit about themselves, because I know when people sometimes tune in, it's, it's a lot of death, it's a lot of loss, it's a lot of grief, and like, but
yeah,
I like to also focus on like what are the happy things that we do in our life, and the things that kind of spark joy for us. So whatever you're comfortable sharing.
yeah, it's really important to find that too. And I think that's
Nice
something
balance
that's
of both.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of been like a work in progress, honestly, since everything has
Mm.
happened. So it's kind of like range, but ironically, I am a therapist. So I'm an associate marriage and family therapist. So I'm like working on hours for licensure. I feel like I'm definitely a different person than I was like 2 years ago. I mean,
Oh,
even
sure.
through like my MFT program, like I definitely found a change in myself, but this happened like around less than 6 months after, kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. So yeah, definitely just trying to find like little things every
Yeah.
day that make me happy, even if it's something that I've never thought would make me happy, like
Yeah.
coffee, like little things.
Literally. The little no, serious, I literally say I know I've said that at some point on this podcast before, and I always use cappuccinos and stuff as an example because, like, I'm a cappuccino girly,
Yeah,
and I was like, literally, if you find gratitude or joy in nothing in that particular day, if you are grieving anything, grieving a person, grieving health, grieving a financial struggle, whatever, just the littlest thing that sparks joy for you that day. And it's just building off of that. And,
yeah,
and those are those little steps that we have to take to move forward. So that being said, because I know you're probably like, okay, how do I explain this without like having told my story yet? So I would love to open the floor to you
sure.
to again, whatever you're comfortable sharing with your story and your journey of loss.
Yeah, so we can start back to August. So I had
Where do I start?
graduated. Yeah, we'll get all the background. So I graduated from my MFT program,
And
and
really quick, for those who are listening and maybe didn't catch, I think I literally was just trying to put this together in my head. Is MFT, is that the marriage and family therapist? Okay, gotcha.
correct, yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
So I was in that program for 2 years, and so I graduated, so got all that done out of the way. So I had finally moved back home to San Diego, moved back in with my parents, was like excited to just kind of start my MFT journey and everything. October of 2022, I had gotten into a car crash. I'm fine, but I had gotten a concussion. And so that night, which is so interesting to think about, but I got a concussion, and so I was supposed to take my parents to the airport. And so my parents ended up going on their trip still, but my dad ended up doing that. And so I think it was like that night my dad had mentioned that he had like started getting headaches, but it was just very like, we had called it like sympathy headaches at first because he like knew I was concussed. So he was like, "Oh, I'm just
Oh,
feeling this like headache." And so we didn't think anything of it. But the headaches ended up lasting about 2-3 weeks, I want to say. And so my mom and I were finally like, okay, we need to get you checked out. We
yeah.
need to just like make sure everything's okay. And so I want to say, so about a little less than a month later, he was able to get an MRI. We had to like force them to give it to him because he never got headaches.
Yeah.
And so he got the MRI back, and I remember being at work, and I got the call basically saying that he had to go in for like, so he ended up driving himself to urgent care like one of the nights. And so it is very like, I'm just so grateful that he did when he did, because that night he ended up having emergency brain surgery because they had found a tumor and didn't really, I don't remember if they didn't know what kind of tumor it was, but they had to go in and ended up removing 70% of it. So finding out that night that it was cancerous, but again, didn't know what kind. So basically going through that like timeline, as we want to call it,
Mhm.
that night. So morning after, we knew that like he had to go through chemo and all of that, but we had found out that it is called glioblastoma. I don't know if you've ever heard of that type of brain cancer. It
I
is,
have
yeah,
more now actually having this podcast and being in this group, but I don't think it's common, right? Like, I don't think this
it's
I don't know.
yeah,
Correct me if I'm
it's
wrong. Okay,
actually,
yeah.
which is super interesting. So it's the rare, like most rare, like most aggressive type of brain cancer. And so they had actually mentioned that it really like if you like look, there's a website for it, of course. So like they basically say that like every patient is between like 7 to 8 months is like the survival rate. But then there's that like point whatever percent that's not. And so of course I was like holding, of course holding out hope. But what was
Situational.
interesting that they don't tell you about this brain cancer is that it's kind of like a decline, if you want to call it. So he, like right after the diagnosis and everything, when he was going through chemo and radiation, I believe, and you don't have
Timeline,
to
yeah.
quote me on this part, but yes, totally. I'm going to blame it on the timeline right here.
Yeah.
There was a time where it was, I think we ended up stopping the radiation because it was causing seizures. So I had seen like my first like convulsive seizure in my entire life, um,
Horrifying.
which was I think, a part that sticks with me a lot because I
Oh,
think
sure.
it was wild. And it was also not, he wouldn't just have like convulsive, it was like mental seizures as well. So like he would be like on the computer, like one of our big computers, and he would just kind of space out. And you would kind of just see him like pressing buttons, but wouldn't like I didn't understand. My mom and I didn't understand at the time that that was considered like a seizure. Um,
Whoa. Oh my god.
so October of 2022 to like February 2023, things were somewhat normal. Like he was still able to talk. He would have, I think, like those mini seizures, but it wouldn't. He was able to just know who we were, like have
You can still
full conversation.
function.
Yeah, which was so interesting because I kind of forgot about it a lot of the time. But then I was also like, okay, like I know my dad's sick, but I also am holding out hope, trying to just process everything. Also, wasn't going to therapy at the time. I ended up honestly just like working, which I know we can talk about later on, is when you
Yeah,
kind of just
yeah.
find yourself hyper focusing on things
Let's
to just
definitely get to that, yeah.
distract yourself.
Mhm.
Um, so I want to say like motor skills and walking and a little bit of speech, but it was all pretty much like combined
Mhm.
at that point. But
Mhm.
my mom and I could start noticing little things
That's
here
so
and there.
scary.
And so, honestly, I can tell you right now, I don't remember when it took the turn, but between July and August was that's when I saw the most drastic change. Before that, it was like he was falling. We would, I mean, now I get so triggered by doctors. I hate doctor's appointments. I have to treat myself after every doctor's appointment because
Aw.
I don't like the hospital environment.
There's
I remember
trauma around that, for sure. I've been there. Yeah, I can completely empathize with
never,
that.
never really realized like that's what it was. I think until
Yep.
recently that whole time when I was like, I didn't know if like in the middle of the night we would have to call the ambulance, like just little things like that. It was also, so it was that. And then, yeah, so during that, sorry, I think I'm going back a little bit, but
That's okay,
then,
yeah.
yeah, like April to like July was like during that time where I was just like, noticing things weren't right, and that's where a lot of the hospital and ambulance and 911 calls were coming in.
Trauma
So
started happening, yeah.
no, for sure. At one point, I mean, he had a walker. He would actually, like, in the middle of the night, he would make breakfast because chemo made him really hungry. So he would like he would like
Oh
walk her into the
my
kitchen and
gosh.
like start like making eggs or something. Sometimes he would do it and sometimes he would set up the fire alarm. So we would like wake to like the fire alarm.
Oh
Um,
my
it
god.
was just like little things like that where I was just like, this is real. Like, this is really happening. And I told myself I didn't want to move out. I wanted to stay there and enjoy my time with him and like
Yeah.
spend every moment because I mean, when I never realized like how fast these things
Oh, yeah.
change. Honestly, the whole 8-month process, he was so positive. Like, he never complained about any of the pain he was having. If anything, I wouldn't even know he was having pain because of how positive he was. And just like the last 4 months, I want to say it was like the last month, he was really confined to bed. He wasn't talking as much. I mean, this is so wild to think about now, but I think the last few words that I had with him, because then he kind of slipped into this like mini coma that was more of just him sleeping. I mean, we were told from hospice that he could hear, but I don't even know if the proper word is a coma, but I do feel like that's what
Yeah,
it was because he was just sleeping all the time.
right.
Um, the last few words I remember 3 phrases slash words that I remember him saying. The first one was, I love you guys, and banana," because he wanted me to feed him a banana.
Oh my god.
And it was just, like, super
Oh.
wholesome and sweet, and so he ended up passing in August of 2023, and the last few days before that were just him sleeping, and he was making these noises that I really don't even know how to describe, but it was more of, I think, like, just the gasping for air type. And that night, my mom's, friends just came over, like, a few of her friends came over, and one of them is, I think, a veterinarian or a type of doctor, and he was able to just tell him, like, "You're okay, like, the girls are gonna be okay," and
Mhm.
that was it. I think thinking back on it, it was so fast. I mean, those
Yep.
8 months were
Oh,
a
no, they
blur.
are. Yeah, when
I
you really like yeah, hindsight's 2020. I feel that way about my mom too, who was also about 8 months from diagnosis to death, and yeah, I mean, it's kind of in the eye of the beholder, I guess, if people consider that to be fast or not. I mean, for someone who lost their loved one in an instant and didn't get to say goodbye, and there was no decline, there was nothing, like, they'd probably only wish they had those 8 months, you know, but, like, I agree with
yeah.
you in the grand and that's because we don't compare grief here. So, in the grand scheme of things, yeah, there's, like, probably a part of it that felt like an eternity at the time, but then looking back
Yeah.
on it, it's just like, "Wow, that what just happened?" You know?
And so much happened in those 8 months. So I think,
Yeah.
like, when I think about those 8 months and I just think about even just, like, the little aspects, so, like, I think of, like, the ambulance visits, I think of when they would come to the house and just to help him get up, I think of when we would have what are they called? Like, helpers come in, like, they would kinda, like, run in shifts to just help him with whatever they
Yeah.
needed to walk to, but I feel like for the most part, I just remember his positive attitude through all of it
Mhm.
and just, I mean, I would ask him how he was doing, he'd be like, "I'm okay." Like, "Okay, cool."
Oh my
Like, "Great,
god.
good to hear it." But it
So
was I mean, and then also working at the same time, like, trying to remind myself, like, I'm coming home to something that I just have no idea what's gonna happen. I have
yep.
0 to 100, no idea what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's you're in such a what I found, and maybe you found this to be true too, but I was in such a state of survival more than I realized. Like, definitely with my mom's decline. My dad was also they both had pneumonia at the same time at one point. Like, there's certain yeah, like these moments or these days when you like look back on them and you're like, how did I even how was I functioning like
yeah,
during all of this? So I wanted to ask you, like throughout all of the I mean, let me first start with this question. At the time, maybe you were because you're, like, kinda in this field, but, like, were you familiar with anticipatory grief, like, either as a concept or, like, going through anticipatory grief at all? Because I certainly was not, but I realized as I've gotten into this grief space and coaching and all of that, that, like, oh boy, was I going through some anticipatory grief, and we've talked about that on the podcast here too before, but, like, I'm curious from your perspective.
That's so I really love starting off with this question, honestly, because I think, one, that I love that this is helping me talk about this more too, and
Yeah.
I think it's so hard to I mean, there's no way to normalize grief. Like, I feel like there's no way to just be like I mean, sometimes there is where it's like, yeah, this is we grieve at a lot of things in our life and but
Generally speaking, like, yeah.
yeah, I never I think there was one time and I remember telling a friend I had at the time, I was like telling her, there's a really good chance that, my dad's not going to make it to my wedding. And I'm just, but it's just not making sense at the time. It's just not making sense because I'm just trying to stay positive through it. And, and I would
Mhm,
always say, like, there's a chance this might not happen. And I kind of would say it like that because I always found myself a pretty optimistic person.
mhm.
But I feel like what I've noticed from kind of this journey, if you will,
Yeah.
I'm not positive. Like, I think I've definitely become
Like, that
like
girl's gone.
yeah, like, I've definitely become a little bit more on, like, the negative side because I think I'm so I there's that
The
anger.
realist side where you're just like, yeah, it can harden us a little bit, some of this
Yeah,
stuff.
and I think at the
Yeah.
time I was like, "Yeah, there's a chance, but I'm just gonna keep it positive," and I think there was a time when my mom had mentioned, like, like, the harsh I don't remember how she had worded because I probably honestly
You
spaced
blacked it
it
out, you're
out,
like,
like
"I refuse to hear this."
yes, exactly, and I was like, "No, I'm gonna stay positive. Nope, he's gonna be
Yeah.
fine." As I literally saw the decline, I still
I was
was
in
like,
the
"Nope, he's
same
gonna be
boat.
fine." Like, he'll be able to see everything. So,
Yeah.
I hope that answers that because I think
It
it
does.
was such a confusing, um it was very confusing. Like,
Yeah.
I just kind of felt like I was going through the motions, and I know that
Mhm.
every day would not be the same. So, I felt like I had to, yeah, just anticipate, like, nothing, but then everything at the same time.
Yes. Oh my gosh, so wow, that's so beautifully said. No, that's so relatable, and I bet so many here people, that makes sense. So many people here listening can
Yeah,
empathize with that because we are ju we are in survival mode. We are processing it as it's happening, and I would even argue in a way it's like we're living it and then not even processing it fully of, like, the severity of it, or we just and especially for those of us who haven't been through, like, a particularly traumatic event, which I personally hadn't until my parents' declines were happening as well. Like,
yeah,
y for many of us, we wanna stay positive. We cannot even, like, begin to comprehend that this horrible cancer, because I can also relate to having a parent with cancer, with both of mine, that that's even their reality, and that therefore that is my reality in that they are losing their capacities, and we're mourning them before they're even gone. And that's what I wanted to, like, ask you too, because I definitely felt now more so looking back that I 1000% was grieving my parents before they were gone. With my mom, she was always very energetic, very, like, on the go, and even literally in some of her hospital rooms after she got a tracheotomy, she was, like, on the ground doing yoga and some or stretching and stuff like that. I'm like, "Who are you?" But she was, like,
yeah,
still very much herself, and she didn't lose her, like, mental capacities towards the end, but, I mean, she, was herself, but definitely not herself. I mean, she had, like, quite literally lost her voice, amongst other things, and just her general health, of course. But with my dad, I really just my heart goes out to you because and honestly, like, our dads almost sound like again, timeline, but, like, depending on my dad lost a lot of his cancer went from his prostate to his brain, and so he started to lose maybe not like well, no, maybe no. I don't know if it's, like, motor skills, but, like, communication,
Yeah.
then got limited,
Yeah.
all those little things need to be grieved and processed as well. We have to give ourselves grace for what we didn't know at the time. So, like, I had beaten myself up about that a lot because I was like, "How did you not see the signs? Why weren't you checking on him more?" I realized later on I was doing all I could at the time, while also grieving a very significant other parent in my life who had died just months before. And then, like, not even wanting to believe that he was this bad off. And I remember kind of the moment in the day that I was like, "Oh my god, I'm actually gonna lose another parent here pretty soon." I don't know when,
Yeah.
but I know it's coming. And so I really touched me, like, with what you were saying, where you're just like, you're anticipating nothing because you're like, "I don't know how this is gonna go down. We don't know, but you know."
Yeah, and nothing ever prepares you for that, and I think
What
that that's
a
what
mind.
didn't make sense for me. Mind
Yeah.
like, mind blowing, honestly. I think
Yep.
I don't and it's so funny because I think to myself, like, "Oh, it's just, like, the" and I know I keep saying, like, the 8 months was so fast, but I think, honestly, from the beginning of his diagnosis, I was like, "There's no way that this is actually happening," because, I mean, my dad was so healthy, he was, like, active, I mean, he loved surfing, I mean, I think at one point, even, like, a couple months into his diagnosis, he still went surfing. Like, he still was, like, enjoying, I mean, and I I think that's where, like, when I mean, this sounds kinda dark, but at the same time, not so dark,
We
but
listen and we don't judge here.
I think when I think about, and I actually saw this, um, on TikTok the other day,
Yep.
and it resonated insanely hard with me because it was basically saying that, like, when you go through, like, I think it was especially losing a parent too, and kind of really seeing the progression and seeing how they were
So
before as
vibrant,
well.
lively, all these things to not.
Yeah, exactly, that you kinda just sounds so funny, but you, like, don't wanna survive anymore, but then you know that you want to for them.
Yep.
And it was like, ooh, I was kind of trying to think about that, and I was like, that's I
Mm.
think what I noticed is and I think now this is kind of the stage that I'm in where I'm like, "Oh, I really like being here is not fun anymore."
Yep.
But it's more of it's not fun without them
Yeah.
anymore. It's like really it was like the most confusing,
Mhm.
darkest thing I've ever thought, but I also told myself,
Yep.
I'm like, "I'm that's not my mindset isn't there," but it's also, like, life is just so different now, and
Yeah.
especially in the 8 months, like, it was very different, like, it just didn't but I also didn't think about it because I was
Yeah.
just going through emotions, so I was just thinking I didn't think of the after,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
which is, like, really ironic. I feel like you don't
Yeah.
think about what happened after, and
No, or it,
how
like, might cross our mind, but, like, we can picture it, but we also can't even picture it because it's so not okay, and it's
yeah,
so drastically different from what we've known and what we're comfortable with, and it's so dark and tragic and unspeakably difficult and not okay that, like, we almost, like, can't even allow ourselves or our mind to go there,
yeah.
even if it goes there, if that makes sense. That today this whole conversation, it's just, like, a bunch of, like, different contradictions and paradoxes, like, I think, and just this. But this is a testament to, like, what
What it
grief and loss can do. Like, it is confounding and so
I
confusing, and this is why it's
yeah,
so difficult to navigate. 100%.
no, I agree, and honestly, I think that's what I think confusing is the best word to describe it.
Yeah.
I like confounding, I actually really like that word, that was
I
really
know this
nicely
my fun word of the
and
day.
yeah,
It's
like
like a
eye-opening.
slightly fancier version of confusing.
Yeah, no, I think oh my gosh, that's huge right there because I
Yeah.
think that I've definitely I mean, I've noticed it's changed. I mean, I think this is the hardest part is I've noticed so many of, like, my relationships changing with people, and I
Mm.
think my motivation to even just and we can talk about this too, but I
I was
think
gonna say,
this is
let's segue into this is yeah, let's get
yeah,
into that because I really wanted to talk to you because I think we definitely have a good idea of, like, of course, your whole story, but, like, how it was sort of as you were losing him, quite frankly. I wish I had a prettier way to say that, but, throughout his decline. So, yeah, talk to me about the after. Like, how did you
Yeah.
proceed forward, pick up the pieces, like, begin to navigate life without your dad? Which, by the way, what is his name?
Roger.
Roger. How did yeah, so what is life without Roger? Like, what does this even look and
Yeah.
feel like for you
I
now?
It's so strange. Like, I
Yeah.
think it's so it was 1 year, August 1st.
Mhm.
So I think or last August. Wow, okay, sorry, I was looking at January and
I
I was like,
know,
"Oh my
again,
goodness."
time. So for those who don't know, we're recording this in, like, early 2025, so that was, like, 6-ish months ago? 5?
Yeah.
6? No,
So it's
less.
5.
5, whatever. Anyway, yeah.
So it's been, like, definitely, like, year and then, yeah, at that time, it'll be, like, year and a half or so. I can tell you right now, first year this sounds
Yeah.
weird. I
Mhm.
remember parts of it, of course, but I think in that aspect of my life, because 'cause I'll just kind of put that into, like, a little box, the grief part,
Yeah.
I was in complete denial the first
Mhm.
year. I think
Mhm.
that I mean, even honestly, I didn't take bereavement leave from work. I can tell you that right now.
Oh.
School usually start, like, mid-August,
Yeah,
um, early September. Didn't take grief leave
just
or
went
grief
right
leave.
into it.
Like, yeah, didn't take bereavement leave because I literally heard Roger in my head being like, "Nope, you gotta work," and I was like, "You're right, I need to work."
Yes,
Because,
sir.
I mean, I think yes, 100%, because I think given the, like, person he was too, it was his favorite thing was, like I mean, I would always complain about things to him, and I put that in
Mhm.
quotes because, you just rant about things, he'd be like, "Stop complaining, like, keep going," and I'm like, "It's a rant, dad, it's a rant. I'm trying to
Just
rant."
just sit here with me while I put this out for 5 seconds, thank you.
And it was interesting too because I mean, I would play a few of his favorite songs, and two of his favorite songs are Southern Cross by it's like Crosby, Stills, and Nash or something like that.
That's one of my
I
dad's
was
fa I just got chills, Leah. That's, like, my dad's favorite artist. Like, I'm not joking.
Me
We listened
too.
to their CDs back in the day all the time. Wow, okay, yep, mhm.
Whoa. Oh, that's
That's
ins
amazing. What a
wow.
synchronicity. Yeah,
No,
the
for real.
best.
That
Yeah,
was
I hear, like, songs will just come on randomly in stores and stuff. Crosby,
yeah,
Stills, Nash& and Young. Yeah, 100%. I'm just like, "What's up, dad?" You're
that
saying hi.
was
Yeah.
that's oh my god. Oh, I'm gonna try not to get
What are
emotional
you
here. That's
saying? Oh my
beautiful.
gosh. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't wanna
It's
interrupt you, but I'm like, "Wow, I gotta
you
say something." Okay,
it's
so he
to
loves
no,
that song.
please do. Like, that was Southern Cross was, like, his all-time favorite,
Yeah.
and there was one time when I took him I think I took him somewhere after I took him to chemo, and, like, I was playing the
Mhm.
song, and he wanted it on repeat, and, oh my gosh, he just, like, broke down. Like, every time the song, like, played, he was just he's like, "Nash was just such a good person," and I'm like and it was just, like, the most wholesome experience, and so, like,
Oh my
sometimes I'll
god.
play that song and, like, always just chills, but then his one of
Oh.
his favorite songs was "Dream On" by Aerosmith.
No, you
Um,
did not just
oh,
fucking
don't
say that,
tell me.
Leah. That was one of my
Please
mom and I songs. I'm not joking. She was literally
don't.
obsessed with Aerosmith. She, like, walked like, Kissed the Ground Steven Tyler walked on, and literally, I almost can't listen to Dream On without crying, like, almost every
Oh,
because
I
that
am
was, like
too.
my mom and I would blast that song in the car and, like, sing it together.
That he I
Unwell. Oh my god.
no,
Okay.
I'm, like, hot. I'm, like, wearing a jacket, I'm, like, sweating. I it
Oh
was
my
so with that
god.
one, it was I think it was honestly, like, the last month, I would play it on his speaker, and, like, the part where, like, Draymond gets, like, really high pitched,
Yep. Yep.
like, he would always sing that part, so now whenever I hear that song, I think of, like, his little off-key, high-pitched
Yeah.
voice,
My
and
mom's too.
so
That's so funny.
it's so funny because I think
Oh my
just
god.
yeah, so sorry, I got totally off topic there, but yeah, that was so wow, what was I saying about that? I what was I saying about
You were
that?
meant to
I
bring that up, first of all. I just have to say
um,
that, like, there's a reason
actually,
that that just got brought into this conversation. Wow. By the way, my mom and dad are totally friends with your dad. I just know it already.
yeah,
They found
they're
each other.
bond
They're hanging out. Wow. Okay, but you were Well, well, I know you were talking about, like, just not seeing your dad emotional very often, and then obviously whenever he talked about you, I mean,
Yes,
clearly
thank
got
you.
emotional.
Definitely, like, the last, like, few months before, like, when he was able to talk and just, like, form those sentences, like, I mean, I think about that all the time too and just, like, reminding myself because I think, when people say, like, "Oh, well, you're making them proud, like, don't, like," or, it drives me
You're
nuts.
like,
Um,
"Thanks."
and
Like,
we can
only we
always
can tell ourselves that. You know what I mean?
no,
Oh, either we need to hear it from their mouth, or it's like, "Okay, I know in my gut I'm making my parent proud," but, like, if yeah, when you hear from other people, it just kinda it's just like, "Okay, thanks."
and
Like,
I
I
have, like
comes from a good
dude,
place, but
I have, like, 4 phrases now where I just am like, "Don't say this to me." I, like it's so funny because when, now, I always say like tell myself that like I know I am because I know he used to say it like right before. And so that's what I think has kept me going. But I think going back to your question about the year, I yeah, definitely did take bereavement leave as I mentioned too. I think that survival mode was there. I think
yeah.
I really just went through the motions. I don't think I felt very much. I think I knew that things were going to be very different now. I couldn't really see how at the moment, but I think that was, I think, the first maybe 4, like 6, 7 months. But I think now it feels more real. And I think I don't know if, I mean, I know people say it never gets easier, but I think for some reason, like that first year was just that survival mode, trying to just kind of be
Yeah.
doing
You're just
work,
trying to
trying
keep your
to,
head above water and
yeah,
get used to a literal like, an existence without their presence in it, and you are just trying to feel that out, like, I don't wanna put words in your mouth, but this is what I find often is, like, a lot of griever that first year, you're just trying to navigate a day to day, moment by moment without their presence, physical presence, like, in it.
yeah,
What you were alluding to is, like, there's a permanence now that we're
yeah,
dealing with, being a few years out roughly, and understanding that and getting used to that, and that in its own way does hurt more.
yeah. Yeah,
1000%.
I think it's so funny because I think especially I think, and of course, when people say like, "Oh, it comes in waves," but it's so funny because I think especially now recently, it's been hitting harder where it's like
Yeah.
it's just a realization, and I hate saying this because this is something I realized I've just really sucked with, and I'm not
Mhm.
gonna sugarcoat it, I'm not gonna also apologize for it, and I think I've
Yeah.
realized, like, "Okay, well, I feel so bad about this," but I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna apologize, like, I went through
Good.
something really hard and traumatic that
Yeah.
I'm not gonna apologize for," but it is so hard to keep friendships these days, like, I think my motivation to, reach out to people, like, to just be vulnerable has been, I
Mhm.
think, the biggest thing is just even being able to, like, talk about it, talk about how I'm feeling, because I think sometimes I think I'm talking about it, especially, like, right now too, I feel like I'm speaking gibberish. I'm like, "I hope I'm forming right sentences, and I hope she knows what I'm
Yes.
saying." Um,
You are. Can confirm.
well, okay, good.
Doing
I'm
great.
glad you feel Yeah, I think that's what's been so hard is, like,
Yeah.
I mean, I have friends from, like, different states, and, like, I just feel horrible that I'm like, I don't sometimes I'm like, "Oh my god, am I being, like, a horrible friend?" I'm like, "Oh gosh, no, I'm just trying to, like,
Yeah.
survive every day," and, like, thankfully, I mean, my friends have been so supportive, but I also am not I mean, transparency too, like, I'm not vulnerable with a lot of them about how I'm feeling a lot of the time. I have the most severe case of, like, jealousy that I have ever had in my entire life. Like, even in relationships, I've never been the jealous type. I've been like, "No, like, I trust you, like, it's fine."
Yeah.
But no, this jealousy aspect is oh my god, I hate this word. It, like, drives me
I know.
crazy, but that is what I've been feeling. That is, like, I think the biggest emotion that's been coming out is, like, I hate when, like, people talk about their dads. I hate when people talk about, "Oh, like, I called my dad the other day." Like,
Mhm.
"Good for you. Great. Cool.
Yeah.
Sick." Or, like, it's like, it sounds so bad, but, like,
No,
I
it doesn't. It's relatable as
I
fuck.
can't literally can't help but be like, "Okay," and I think I hate saying this, but I think I'm so numb to it now too, where, like,
Yeah.
when people do talk about their dads, I'm like, I just find myself kind of, yeah, like, I guess numbing out or, like, dissociating during that conversation. I'm
Yes.
kinda like,
Oh, so common. Yeah.
"Sick, okay." That unfairness of, like, being able
Yeah.
to, like, I mean, I deactivated Instagram for a while because I just couldn't see families being happy. Like, I just
Oh my god,
couldn't do
this is so Leah, so common. Like, oh my god, I talk about this on Instagram all the time. Like, it's
Yeah, I love that.
so many people go through this, and every single time I, like, post about it or we see something about it or whatever, people are so truly thank you for bringing this up because there is so much shame. There's so jealousy does not have, like, the best connotation as a word, right? Like, it's a little slimy, it's got a little something to it, but it's so valid, and it's something that so many of us experience, and we don't always understand why, we don't like to admit it, we feel
Yeah.
shameful for admitting it's like we don't wanna feel jealous, I don't wanna feel envy, right? However,
Oh,
whatever word everyone kind of associates with it, but I feel
yeah.
the exact same way. I feel it with my mom, I feel it with my dad individually, I feel it with my parents together, and
Ye
I was curious too because
yeah.
my husband and many people around me, I actually do have 2 very best friends who also lost their dads, but
Okay.
there's still plenty of people around me that have both parents, my husband being one of them,
Mhm.
and so he certainly can't understand what I'm going through, and now that we have a daughter and I'm navigating fairly new parenthood without
Yeah.
my parents, and he still has 2 very happy, healthy parents. I am berated with it, and of no fault of anyone it's not their fault my parents fucking died, right? And he shouldn't
Yeah.
but, originally, in my younger days, in my early on in my grieving journey, I called him
Yeah.
out on that not multiple times, a few times because I was like I think at one point I even was like, "Can you stop talking about your parents?" Right? Like, I was,
Yeah.
like,
Sure.
salty that he, like, had the audacity to say and now he was, like, a little bit tone deaf too, to be fair, but he was like, "Man, I really miss my mom," or like, "Yeah, I'm bummed I didn't get to see my mom this week." I was like I wanted to, like I'm not gonna do it here, but like, flipped him off. I was like, "How
You're
dare
like, "At
you?"
least you were able
Frankly.
to
At
see them.
least at least you could go drive 20 minutes and see them if you wanted to. You could call your parents right now. You could text them. I don't have that luxury. I have lost that luxury. That thing that I once took advantage of, gone now, and I feel shitty about that.
Yeah.
And it is something that so many of us deal with, and even to this day, he's just like, "Oh, do you wanna" like, because we call my mother-in-law Gigi for instead of grandma. He's like, "Oh, do you wanna call Gigi? Do you wanna" and like, "Oh, we wanna go see grandma and grandpa?" And I'm like, "Fucking A."
You're like, "Fine,
It's
yes, whatever."
daily. It's daily,
Yeah.
weekly, whatever, that we're having to deal with this. And something you said hit me too, is like, yeah, you do become kinda numb to it because if it happens enough times, right, you're just like, yeah, you do kinda get numb to that a little bit, but it
I
doesn't make
roll
it easier. And then there
no.
are some times where it does hit harder. There are some times in there where randomly it will feel like an absolute gut punch. And then sometimes we can kinda not hear it. But that's unpredictable. Never know when that's gonna happen and when it might send us into, like, a little bit of a spiral that we then have to deal with. It's like it's
Yeah.
exhausting.
Yes. I
Yeah.
think exhausting is 100% the way to put it because I think I'm so tired of feeling that way, and I'm so tired of
Mhm.
feeling that jealousy. I'm so tired of feeling that, like, well, at least you have one. Like, I'm
At
tired.
least.
Yes, exactly. And I think sometimes I find myself, and I'm gonna totally admit this, and if it's gonna feel so great to say out loud, I can tell you that right now.
Oh, I don't even know what you're about to say, and so many people listening to this podcast are gonna be like, "Girl, yes." So anyway, continue.
Oh, yeah, no, that's awesome to hear, honestly, already, because I have already, and this is something that I've been trying to tell myself too, is like, I'm trying to reach out to more people. I'm trying to reach out for that support and everything. Fucking hate it. Like, I
Yeah.
honestly think it's like because you don't want to feel like a burden to people. You don't want to feel like, oh, like listen to my story again, or like, oh, I'm
Yep.
feeling sad today. I'm feeling lonely, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I have gotten to the point, and I can tell you right now, where like when that jealousy hits, I find myself, and this is something I'm trying to avoid. I can just prefacing that, but I get so scared sometimes that I'm going to start like resenting people,
Yeah.
for, like resenting my friends, like resenting the freaking like daughter and dad on the side of the street, like
You like
on
don't even
social.
know. Just random strangers. You're just yeah.
No, and I'm like, I freaking hate you right now. Like, I will find
Yeah.
myself glaring at people. I find myself rolling my eyes at people. And it's just like, I think that's what I get so scared of, honestly, with
Yep.
this process too, is like that feeling of like, okay, by the time like next year hits, I'm not gonna have any friends left because I'm just gonna resent everyone. And I'm like,
Mm.
no, 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 I'm not gonna get to that point. But it's like, but that jealousy is so present. And
Yeah.
like, I think one of the hardest things to turn off.
Oh, it
Like,
is
I don't know.
absolutely. There is no turning it off. It's coping with it, right? It's figuring out ways to address those moments when and if they come. And jealousy, and that goes for anger, sadness, I mean, every other major and minor emotion that we can and do and will feel in this process. That is the definition of coping, right? And it's figuring out what works for us so we don't become. I'm so glad you brought this up because this is like the essence of this podcast really is it's to not like to completely prevent people from like getting
Feeling
hardened by grief and closing people off and whatever. That's not the only point of this podcast, but
yeah.
it is one of them. It is to empower people to know that these things are completely and utterly normal, that they are not alone in feeling these things, and it is okay to admit it. But also, how do we navigate feeling these things and feeling this way while trying our best to naturally embrace, like not forcing ourselves to feel a meaningful, happy, non-resentful life? And how do we experience that? How do we even begin to tap into that? And where do we even start? Right. So I'm so grateful you brought all of this up. And actually, this is kind of a great segue to one of the last things I kind of wanted to ask you as we sort of start wrapping up. Like, and I'm
Yeah.
also very curious too, with your education and your background as a therapist, also, like, but also just as a fellow griever,
Yeah.
what are some things that you've used to cope? Or, what do you do in those moments to not force yourself out of it, but just to kind of help get yourself out of it? Like, do you have any like more professional tools that you would like recommend, or even just things that have worked for you? I love asking this question because I think, we can all never have enough kind of tools in our toolkit, so to speak.
Yeah, I no, this is such a great question. I can actually speak on both, like, the therapist side and,
Right.
like,
Right. Give me both sides.
the personal side too. Because I think with, like, the therapist side, I think what I found was, like, overworking myself, especially, like, I love helping people, like, this is exactly why I
Mhm.
am so grateful that you, like, offer this opportunity because, like, this is also a subject that is, like I mentioned, like I told you before
Yeah.
too, it's so confusing and so hard to talk about, and, like, even just being able to, like, normalize these things already helps a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I don't recommend, like, overworking yourself by any means.
0 out of
Um,
10 recommend.
that's the first thing. I think, I mean, as, like, professional/unprofessional as that sounds, like, I definitely noticed, like, I think there was definitely a way that I could have gone about it, but of course, like, everyone's gonna feel it
Balance.
differently. Everyone, yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I think, you're really not, and it's like what we talked about too, you're never gonna know how you feel, like, in the moment, day to day. But I think I know, so, like, I guess I'll combine this one. One of my favorite things, and actually my cousin recommended this to me because so her dad actually passed around like 4 months, for I think it was like 4 or 5, 6 months before my dad, and they were brothers, which is like the
Oh,
most, it's like the most heart wrenching thing. Like, we are just so
devastating, but like weirdly poetic and like what?
like,
Oh my
very
god.
strange. And so, like, it's really nice because we have such a beautiful relationship. I've always thought of her like my little sister. So I look up to her in like every way. And so one of the things she actually suggested to me, and this was a while back, that she would actually write letters to her dad. whenever she kind of had this like feeling that she wanted to say something. And so I actually bought a little like notebook. It's called like love letters.
Oh, how cute. Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed.
Yeah, so just like little like
Oh.
whenever I'm feeling
Oh,
whatever it
Leah, I
is, like
love
I'll just write letters to him and like let him know where I'm at in my hours or just like anything going on. So she had
healing.
suggested that and then I had gotten like a few suggestions to do that. That was really cool and I think that that's been helpful. But honestly, just like little things. Like I think I'm trying really hard, especially at this point, to like listen to myself. And if I am like feeling a coffee, I'm gonna listen to that gut and I'm gonna go get myself a coffee. And I one of them so that's I want to say like the therapeutic side, I think, like
Yeah,
just
yeah,
listening to yourself and listening to that feeling and like feeling that, which I'm so bad at feeling my feelings, but it's important to do. And just like let yourself kind of explode if you have to, like whatever feeling it is. And that's my like this is my therapeutic.
yeah. You're like,
Like
"Okay, that was a therapy brain side." Okay.
just like feeling everything. And I think I've finally been okay with feeling everything. And
Mhm.
accepting that like I'm not gonna be okay all the time. Just like knowing that it's okay to just not be okay all the time and
Yeah,
like you might go into work like I've had kids that have been dealing with grief and it is sometimes it's cathartic because I'm like, oh, I'm kind of helping myself a lot here, but then I'm also like,
yeah,
okay, focus on the client and focus on like doing what I can to help them and
yeah.
give
It's
them the
what are
tools
their needs right now? Like, yeah.
exactly as I'm literally telling myself like, Leah, you should be following these
Right.
instructions.
I feel like I should really start taking my own advice here at some point, but
Oh yeah, it gets
easier said than done.
very confusing at times for sure. I do
Yeah.
have one that I kind of just thought about, and it's something
Mhm.
that, my mom and I have been trying to do talk about him constantly.
Oh,
Like we are like,
yeah,
oh, what would Roger do in this sense? Oh, this is Roger. Or like, talking about him as much as we can because we always say how like that keeps him alive. Like just
yeah.
keeping his memory alive, keeping those like like looking at pictures. I have a lot of home videos that I found actually, I think like 4 months before he
Yeah.
passed. And, like when he was in kind of the state of him sleeping, like I played it, telling him like, "Oh, I'm playing this video clip of when I was a kid. Like I know you can't see it right now, but I'm just telling you what it is." So little things to just even anything to keep him alive every single day. Like I always try to do one thing that even if it's playing like Dream On or Southern Cross, like
Yeah.
even just like playing like playing a song, playing, just doing something in his honor, I think is
Yeah.
huge. So my mom's so like their side of their house, there's like a gate and there was always like a motion sensor light, which has always just been there. But my mom and I noticed at one point that there was this light that would turn on anytime we were in the kitchen for the most part. And we finally came to the conclusion that it was Roger that would just appear. Because you know how sometimes they say like flashing lights or like,
Oh, totally. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, they
So
mess
this
with
is
us. They turn shit on and off, like, yeah.
we would always laugh about because he was such a techie guy. Like I mean, now I'm my mom's tech person, but like she's always like, okay, Leah, it's your turn. Like, help
Yeah.
me with this. Like, okay, you got it. But he was always such a techie person, like such a jokester type. And so like every time I'm over there, at least once that light goes on. And it is so weird. Like it gives me chills. And so now every time
Mhm.
that light comes on, I do talk to him and I'm like, hi, like thanks for
What's
visiting. And
up? Yeah.
my mom's the same thing. She's like, hey honey, how's it going? And
Oh,
it's so nice to like have that. I think that that's, like finding those little
it makes them
like
feel
false
less far away because they can feel so far away, but I choose to believe they're so near. They're probably all
yeah.
up in our business, actually, if we really like,
Yeah,
real
it's
talk.
when when people are like, "Oh, like how are you? Like how's your mom?" And I'm like, "Oh, my mom's on a trip right now. She's enjoying herself, which is great. Like,
Mhm.
she needs it. I'm just working, like, doing my thing." But I noticed like and this is such a weird way to put it, but I think for the past year and I'm just going to span it to a year because
Yeah.
I can't even give you a timeline on this one.
Yeah.
I feel like the mask has been there. Like I have
Mhm.
totally just mask myself. I've acted like everything's fine. I've just kind of been laughing along with things when
Yeah.
like inside I'm like this I'm not who I was before this. Like that's
Nope.
for damn sure.
Nope.
And I mean, as much I think that mask is trying to come off because I'm like trying to be more vulnerable about it, but I'm also like I'm very selective now, I think, with like
Mhm.
where my vulnerability goes
So fair.
because I'm tired of the s- I'm just gonna say it, the
Yeah.
stupid little like original things that people say that I'm just like, can you just say something different? Like, can you just say
Come up
and
with
I'm
literally anything else.
yes. And I'm also
Yeah.
like, but you know what would make this different is if he was fucking here. Like
Yes.
nothing help unless, so it's like I want the help, but then I'm also like, you're not gonna help me because I don't I don't know what help I need anymore.
Right.
Like
You're like, "I don't even know what I need. I know I need something. I'm trying to figure it
yes,
out, but thanks for nothing over there with your comment." Like, yeah, no, yeah.
it never and I think that's the thing too is like it just and I never like bash what people say, but in my head I'm like, I don't know if that
Mm.
helped. Like,
It's
I
just like,
don't
how
know.
would they feel if the tables were turned and they got something like that said to them and or one of those at least statements or something,
Yes.
people do it. I know it's out of discomfort, not knowing what to say, wanting you to just be better, they wanna help fix it, they mean well. There's a variety of reasons
Yeah.
people say what they say, right? And it's like and that's something I've definitely had to, like, learn and cope with too is, like, I can't control other people. I knew that before, but I certainly know it now that I cannot
Oh, yeah.
control them or what they say, or how they go about their life, but I can control my actions and how I respond to it, and what I then provide other people and what I say so that it hopefully, this domino effect where it's like if
Yeah.
one of us starts to have some awareness and respond better to things, then maybe that will rub off on someone else. And then, it's like
Yeah,
maybe
I think
eventually we can completely change humanity and make people more empathetic. But, it's an uphill battle. Very last thing, right as we finish this, what is just do you have maybe just one word of wisdom or just any tip that like if someone is listening to this right now and they are struggling, it could just be something to keep in mind, a way to be more gentle with themselves. Like what would you say to someone right now, one on one, if someone is listening here and going through a tough time?
as weird as this sounds, like, I think if my dad wasn't who he was, like, AKA the most positive person, like,
Mhm.
kind, all generous, like, all of these incredible qualities, like, I don't think I also as cheesy as it sounds, I really don't think I would be, like, who I am. Like, I don't
Yeah,
think
no,
I would
you
be
wouldn't be as optimistic perhaps and positive as
yeah.
it. No, I feel the same way about my parents too. Yeah.
And that's I think the biggest thing is, like, he would always, like especially, like, when he was sick, like, he would talk about I went to one of my best friend's weddings when I during the time that he was sick, which was, like, the weirdest experience, trying to, like, be present, but then also, like, worrying about him, of course, and so the first thing he said to me was, like, "Be present. Like, go and enjoy it
Mhm.
and be present." No, I wasn't that present when I was there because I tried, but I was, like,
You're
attempting
just
to
like, "Okay, dad, thanks for the advice I'm not gonna take, but thank you." Okay.
right, because in the back of my head, I was like, "Oh, this is very hard to be present for, but I will
Yeah,
do my best."
I'm doing my best.
He was with the present part, and that's where I'm getting to, is, like,
Mhm.
honestly, just, like, being present with where you
Yeah,
are in, like, your grieving stage too, and just
love that.
because I think about it now, I mean, as cheesy as it sounds too, like, life is obviously, like, so precious, and
So
it's
short, man.
things happen so fast, and I think
Yeah.
that would be, like, my words of wisdom, if you will, is
That's
just, like, being
perfect, yeah.
present, just, like, living because I tell myself I wanna live, like, how he would be living, like, living life to
Mhm.
the fullest, that's he actually, like, on him and my mom's wedding, like, he had given a speech, and he had said, like, I he so this is also very chilling, and just a little side note that goes into this, I promise. He had made a comment where it was something like, the ones that aren't here and I saw, like, a snippet of this video, but basically talking about, like, the ones that aren't here, like, I'm sure they would advise you, in quotes, to, like, live your life into the fullest. And I thought that, and I had watched that maybe like a month or 2 after he had passed, and I was like, "Is it
Mm,
just like a coincidence that I'm watching this now?" Because
no, I
that's
doubt it.
exactly what he did. And that's, I feel like,
Wow.
what I would advise is just like continue living and just like, I
Just
mean, and he
embody
also,
that.
yeah, to take like every opportunity. And that's, I think, like thinking about his life lessons is like living life to the fullest, being present, and just like taking every opportunity you can, and like
That's so
making,
beautiful.
just being like proud of yourself, because this
Yeah.
is not fucking easy by any means. And it just,
No.
it's the most confusing thing ever. But I think that's what I'm trying to remind myself is like, I just have to live every day, because
Mhm.
you just never know. And just
Yeah.
being proud.
Why not, right? Like, yeah, that's such simply beautiful advice, but it's so much harder than we think sometimes, right? Especially as we're longing for the past, or we're kind of living in the past. We're fearful or uncertain about the future. And so it's very hard to stay present. But,
Yeah.
for anyone here listening, maybe who does have a loved one who was in a similar situation as our parents, right? They were in a decline, perhaps. That's one of the main things that I say as a coach, too. Like, just love on them, be present with them, remember how their hand feels, remember how their voice sounds. You never know when they might lose it, kind of a thing. It could be anything. And same thing afterwards too. And that's why I love doing breath work and things like that, because it's like there are modalities we can tap into to help us like stay present. But that is true. And it really helps you understand too, life is complicated, but it's not as complicated as we might think it is, or we make it out to be. And it's just like, just like,
One-
it's going to be okay. I am so, so grateful that you came on today. And if people want to connect with you or maybe work with you
Yeah.
in the future or whatever, like, where can people find you? And this will all be linked in the show notes too.
Yeah, and the thing too is like, I know that especially with grief, like when it's just, it's not talked about enough too. And like, even though I'm not licensed yet, I do want to be like a safe space for people. So I will be, my Instagram will be there. So like, I'm
Perfect.
happy to answer DMs and just, I want to provide that space. And especially if it's just like a rant about like, this is what I'm going through. Like, what do you
Yeah.
recommend? Like, I that's what I want. I just want to
Like,
be there. Ask me anything. I'm here.
thank you so much for everything that you said today, everything that you offered. I was so, so grateful to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been like the most amazing opportunity, and honestly, yeah,
Oh,
very cathartic. Like it just feels good to be able to
good.
talk things through, and I hope it
Yeah,
all resonates. And I
definitely.
know it
It
will.
will. Yeah. Thank you, Leah.
Thank you.
I am sending you a huge thank you for tuning into today's episode, my friend. I'm so grateful you're here and for the steps you are taking to heal your heart, open your mind, fulfill your soul, learn, grow, and evolve, and move through this crazy thing called life in big, beautiful, impactful ways. Visit lossesbecomegains.com for my blog, more coping tools, ways to work with me, and so much more. And be sure you're following along on Instagram and Facebook at Losses Become Gains, and on Instagram and TikTok at Life with Grief Podcast. I love seeing new faces, meeting new people, hearing your stories, and supporting you however I can. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and share this episode or this podcast with someone who could use it too. And remember to always keep asking yourself, how will I turn my losses into gains today? I'll catch you in the next episode.